Namaste. Welcome to the course on sampling. You will be discussing variables, theory, and sampling map in this course. Let me start with some initial comments. A good understanding of different types of variables you find or design in your research will help you to design a better sampling strategy. Please remember, your sample size depends on the nature of variables. As a researcher, you are in the process of collecting evidence to prove certain theory or to disapprove it. You may wish to create a new theory. Researchers collect the samples and measuring variables relating to the samples. Questions we will answer here. How the variables, the fundamental building blocks of theory, are defined, measured, and arranged temporally. Probably I will explain to the word temporally little later. How cross-sectional research and experimental research are used in social sciences. Finally, how to create a sampling map. One important question I would like to answer here is, we definitely need to understand all these aspects so that you will be able to provide a better sampling strategy. Let us define variable. It is a characteristic or attribute of an individual or an organization that can be measured or observed and that varies among people or organizations that are studied by researchers. A very important point here. It is a characteristic or an attribute of an individual or an organization, and it is measured or observed. Whether a particular characteristic is there or not, you try to observe. Now, psychologists prefer using the term construct for variables. Construct is an abstract idea. It is more than just a term that is defined. Construct is also variable devised by the researcher to characterize some variables. Probably we will discuss more about constructs in later lectures. Variables are defined by two characteristics: temporal order and their measurement. Probably we will see the more about temporal order soon. Temporal order, ordering. Temporal ordering is cause and effect ordering. Temporal ordering means one variable will lead the other variable. Can we say one variable causes the other just because the other variable leads it? May or may not be. Both quantitative and qualitative research may not prove causality. Please remember, there is a separate statistics known as causality research. But to prove causality, we need to satisfy three conditions. According to J.S. Mill, a 19th century philosopher, three criteria to be satisfied are: number one, association, correlation, or cause is related to the effect. Remember, here cause is related to the effect. Number two is temporality. The cause comes before the effect. And the third one, this is the most important thing, elimination of credible alternative elucidation. Other plausible explanations for an effect are considered and are ruled out. Therefore, there are three conditions. First is the association, there should be a correlation. and there should be temporality, and there should be no other explanation for the cause, for the effect. However, the endeavor of a researcher is to constantly find the causality. As a social scientist, you may say there is a probable causation and not absolute assertion that there is causation. Therefore, the temporal ordering is one of the very important aspects which you will be using it in your research, and in the process you also try to find which variable comes first and which variable comes next with enough amount of research. Now, definitions and measurements. Most of the visual representations of the relationships you see in research papers and which you will also be writing, thus are from left to right to depict likely cause and effect. Remember, likely cause and effect. Now, let us come to independent variables. Now, independent variables or treatment variables, manipulated variables, antecedent variables or predictor variables, all are the same. Therefore, it depends on each domain the various variables are being used by researchers. All denote cause or influence outcomes. Please note that generally independent variables is used, and those variables that are manipulated by the researcher. In fact, as a researcher, you will be manipulating independent variables to find its impact on outcomes. Please note about antecedent variables. As a researcher, you need to identify the antecedent variables that are likely to affect the outcome. Therefore, presence of those antecedent variables are necessary condition in some researchers so that you will be able to find the proper impact of independent variables on dependent variables. Now, let me also give the definition of dependent variables. We also call dependent variables, intervening variables and moderating variables. All these definitions I give you. Now, first thing is dependent variables. Dependent variables, criterion variables, outcome variables, effect variables, all are same, or those that depend on independent variables. On the other hand, intervening variables, mediating variables are those variables that stand in between the independent and dependent variables. Now, imagine a mental picture. There is a independent variable because it always starts from left to right, and there is an independent variable, and here is a dependent variable, and in between you have intervening variables. They are mediating variables that stand in between them. And there is another set of variables known as moderating variables, that are newer variables that are designed by the researcher by multiplying another variable and determining their joint impact on interaction. Here, please understand, the mediating variables are those that are in between the independent and dependent variables. Moderating variables are those which are newer variables that are designed by the researcher in order to determine their joint impact or interaction on the dependent variable. A good idea of the definitions of various variables, let us go to the next step. Control variables and co-founding variables. Control variables are important as they influence the dependent variable. They are demographic variables or personal variables such as age, gender, race, generally found to have an impact on the dependent variable. These are to be controlled so that the true influence of the independent variable on the dependent variable is established. Now, the next and most important thing is co-founding variables. Co-founding variables, these variables may have an effect on your variables which may give results that are incorrect. The researchers are expected to eliminate these variables from the experimental design. So many times you will find these co-founding variables affecting your results. Your job is to find out those co-founding variables and remove them. Variables are continuous or categorical. Let us come to the measurement of them. The first one is categorical variables. Entities are divided into separate categories. Therefore, first is a binary variable, male and female, affected by fever or not. The next one is nominal variable. More than two categories. Binary also include nominal. They are just in names. The next one is ordinal variable. These categories have a logical order. Higher to lower or lower to higher. They are ordered. Now these are all, the one set is the categorical variables. Here you have the categorical variables. The next one is continuous variable. Entities get distinct score, interval variable and ratio variables. Continuous variables can be tricky. They are also discrete in social science, social in management and social sciences. True continuous variable can be measured to any level of precision. Discrete variables can take only certain values. For example, in Likert scale of 1 to 5, you can rate only 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. You cannot mark 3.5. But the summations, you may assume any value such as 3.5 or 3.42. The continuum is existing under the scaling and the actual value it can take is limited only to certain values. That is the reason why I have told you in social sciences it is little tricky. Anyhow, remember this. Now let us take the first scale, ratio scale. Now one important thing is, in order to define them, we will take a mathematical dimension as given by Professor Jamadhar Gujarati, who has written the famous book on econometrics. Now, the ratio scale needs to satisfy three properties. Number one, it is a ratio of two variables. There is a distance between two variables and there is an ordering of the variables. This is very important. Therefore, the ratio of 5 divided by 6 has a meaning and the distance between two variables has a meaning and ordering of the variables also has a meaning, and all these three properties have to be satisfied by the ratio scale. Now this may be explained as follows. The variable y takes two values, y1 and y2. The ratio y1 divided by y2 and the distance y2 minus y1 are meaningful quantities, as are comparisons or ordering such as y2 is greater than y1 or y2 is less than y1. I will add one more point, that the scale must have a true and meaningful 0 point. Therefore, ratio scale satisfies the three conditions. And one of the best examples for that is the GDP, gross domestic product, which satisfies all the three conditions. Now, let us go to the next scale, interval scale. Interval scale variables do not satisfy the first property of ratio scale variables. For example, the distance between two time periods, say 2011 and 2012, is meaningful, but not the ratio. For example, 2007 divided by 2000 has no meaning, which may not provide any meaning to the people. Therefore, this scale satisfies only two properties. One is distance between two variables, and there is ordering of variables. There is a distance between two variables, 2011 to 2012, there is a 1 year, and there is an ordering. 2011 is less than 2012. The last ordinal scale is variables satisfy the third or ordering property of the ratio scale, but not other two properties. Therefore, they are ordered. Therefore, higher, lower, lower to higher. Therefore, it is known as ordinal scale. Thus, by having mathematically defining the variables will help us how we can do our statistical tests on these variables. I thought I should include this particular important discussion because you may be reading it under different heads, but still highlighting the basic aspects will help us to do a better kind of sample design and in turn use the output for better testing. Now, the final one is nominal scale. Variables in this category do not have any of the features of ratio scale variables. Variables such as gender, race, and religion are nominal scale variables, and these are sometimes labeled as dummy variables. Now, they are often quantified as 1 or 0, 1 indicating the presence of an attribute and 0 as an absence. Thus, gender as male as 1 and female as 0. This does not mean that male is greater than female. Please do remember this while coding your data in SPSS or other packages. You need to code them as 1, 0 to have a meaningful analysis. More about the analysis and sample size determination in the next lecture. Now, there is another very important variables known as contextual variables. Now, let us assume that you are a researcher trying to find the learning abilities of the students of 9th and 10th standard classes in state board examination. The researcher was given the list of students and there are 2 classes. Now, both the class teachers are different. One class teacher believes in rote learning and wish every student should learn by heart by remembering all the formulas. The other teacher in other class expects everyone to understand and create their own formulas and enjoy learning mathematics. If a researcher takes a battery of mathematical tests to test the children's ability of grasping of mathematics, the reaction or performance of the students will be different depending upon the teacher. Thus, the classroom is a contextual variable which we will be taking into our research. We will be doing hierarchical data analysis where we will be able to find all these contextual variables and try to find their impact. Now, measurement error. See, many of these variables are susceptible to measurement error. To ensure this, we use validity and reliability. Validity refers to whether a given instrument measures what it is designed to measure. If you have chosen a topic on job satisfaction, please do search for job satisfaction instruments that are already available and find out their validity, reliability, on how many samples it has been used, what are all the constructs that are available under each of the under job satisfaction. You have to exhaust this particular kind of a research before starting your study on job satisfaction. I wish that you should not jump to immediately start designing any instrument unless you exhaust the probability of finding such kind of an instrument. If you are studying something, a very unique phenomena, then it is better to design an instrument. On the other hand, if you are already having this particular variable and that has been well studied, it is better to pick up those instruments that are already available for you to make a comparison. You may take the older instruments and then compare with the later instruments, and the instruments may get purified over a period of time because of various other researchers would have already used that particular instrument. Therefore, my advice is to find an instrument which is already there, being validated and having reliability. But this does not mean that You should hold on to that instrument. If that instrument has to be little worded differently so that it suits Indian environment, it is better. Now, how it is, if the wording is not suitable, you may change them, but should not change the meaning. Write to authors of the instrument to get their permission. Most of the authors will be very happy to permit you to use their instrument and may require submission of your results. Please do share your results with them. In this way, you will find your validity and reliability is far more better than by any other methods. Now, validity and reliability dimensions. I will discuss only one or two validities. Criteria validity. There is a need to establish that the instrument measures what it is supposed to measure through an objective criteria. Number two is concurrent validity. Data are recorded simultaneously using new instrument and existing criteria. Now, you can establish all these validities. And next one is reliability. It is the ability of the measure to reproduce the same or similar results under same or similar conditions. If the same questionnaire is given to respondents in different points of time without any intervention, test retest reliability, you may consider the instrument has high reliability. In social sciences, both criterion and concurrent validity is difficult to establish. Content validity, which is the degree to which the individual items in the scale represent the construct, is to be established, is to be used to establish the validity. Therefore, content validity is very important for you before start using your instrument. Now, let us go to a theory. Now, I have introduced this particular point specifically for you. See, what is the purpose of your research? Is the world really conforming to all the laws that are already being created or something different? Therefore, you take a particular organization, try to find whether this particular organization has so and so dimensions and it should give so and so results, but is it giving it? Therefore, it all depends upon theory. Now, let us take a deep breath and relax. I want you to just recapitulate what we have already discussed, probably reflect on what we have discussed on variables. Now, we have got a small map of different variables that are from left to right. And these variables may be related to each other, positively or negatively. If one increases, the other may decrease. For example, if the boredom increases, then performance comes down. If motivation increases, the performance goes up. Therefore, you have a small map of variables, rough map of variables. Now, based on these variables and based on the theory that you have already studied, based on your own observation, discussions with your managers, you will come out with a set of hypotheses. In quantitative research, variables are related to answer the research questions. Therefore, you have a set of research questions that has come into your mind, and here is a set of variables that are available to you, and you make predictions about what the researcher is expecting the results to show. You make a prediction, and that prediction is a hypothesis. These predictions are called hypotheses. Therefore, you make a set of predictions based on the variables that are related. Let me give you an idea. You started by observing the world, then you start thinking that there are certain research questions that have come into your mind, whether this is related to this. For example, what exactly makes a person happy? May not be money alone. Therefore, when you observe this particular phenomena, then you want to try it in an organization. Therefore, then you try to find out happiness is a variable. And what are all the things that helps happiness in a person to grow? Have a set of variables that are already available in the literature and talking with the managers and then other areas, and then create a small variable map. This variable map then you relate by way of a set of hypotheses in order to answer your research question. Our research question is, what makes employees happy? Although there will be some sub questions in this particular area, but basically we would like to answer this question. So for this, a set of hypotheses you will be creating in order to answer those research questions. Now we have a better clarity. The researcher provides explanation of how and why one would expect the independent variable affect the dependent variable, such as in magnitude, that is high, medium or low, or in direction, that is an decrease or increase in independent variable, giving rise to decrease or increase in the dependent variable. These explanations he gets from theory. He or she may use a set of theories or by combination of independent, mediating, moderating variables or depending variables to provide explanation or prediction for the research questions. For you have a rough map with you, but this map is not the final map. You need to test this particular model so that people can use this model in order to predict or get the results what they want. Therefore, there is a structured steps you have to take in order to come to a clear clarity of what exactly your variables that are there, how you are going to measure, and then go for sampling. Now theory. There is a need to understand the definition of theory. Theory is an interrelated set of variables formed into propositions or hypotheses that specify relationships among variables, typically in terms of magnitude and direction. Seminal research by Kerlinger and Creswell has given this definition. The keywords are interrelated set of variables, and they are formed into propositions or hypotheses and specify relationships among these variables. Now, one important thing that we should remember is, once a theory has been put forth by authors, these theories are proved again and again by various experiments or by various observations. After some time, probably the theory may get disapproved. Therefore, there is always a chance for the theory getting disapproved. Therefore, it is only a type of propositions and hypotheses which are proved for a long time. It specifies how and why the variables and the relational statements are interrelated. That's all. The entire theory can be reduced into a set of variables and relational statements with. Therefore, you can clearly understand how theory has been built. Theory or theories will provide explanation for the relationship of the variables and may be given by you as a theoretical perspective. Now, you may not agree with already given theoretical map that has been given, and you give your own theoretical perspective. Theories develop as the relationships are tested by researchers over and over again and more evidence is accumulated. The theory assumes more importance. That there is a need for you to develop an appropriate theory that you choose for your research if you are following quantitative research. Now, I suggest you work with WorldCat. This website will be useful for you to develop a network identities of the authors you identify so that you will clearly know. For example, we will take an author from science, Newton. We wish to know who are all the authors who have influenced him and probably who are all the authors who are influenced by Newton. And in this way, you will be able to find the authors' relationships and then try to come out with a kind of a map which will give you enriched idea about what theory and what kind of sampling you are going to use, all the aspects readily available with you.
While preparing your sample map, I have suggested you to use world www.worldcat.org. This gives a complete understanding, in fact, complete list of items that are available in your area. This website will give you information completely on bibliography of your research. Let us see how it does the entire work. Now I want to search for something like job satisfaction and psychological among bankers. Search everything. Now here you can see there are 774 articles, chapters, downloadable, and various books that are written in this particular topic. Now you can see here, you will be able to get year-wise data as well as author-wise data. You can see the year-wise data here and author-wise data here, so that it will help you to prepare a kind of literature review based on these areas. Therefore, you can have print books, e-books, theses, and dissertation. You can have various areas being given here. But in addition to that, one of the most important things that you will find in WorldCat is the identity network. Now you can see here the WorldCat Identities network, and slowly we will get into these identities. For example, we would like to know about how Sir Isaac Newton, and you will see Sir Isaac Newton, he has between 1642 to 1727. Now if you click on here, you will be getting the identity network here. Now you will see Newton, he has been influenced by the works of Galileo. He has been influenced by Richard Westphal. He has been, in fact, his work has influenced Einstein. Therefore, you can see the works which have been influenced him, and the work his work has been influenced by other scientists. Similarly, you can find for your own authors, for example, if you have chosen a particular author, you can give him in the search site here, and then we'll be able to find out what are all the other related areas that he has worked. Let me give you an idea. Newton was influenced by Galileo. Let us see what Galileo has, who influenced him, and how he influenced others. You can always go. Now you can see here. He has been influenced by Kepler and various Copernicus, various other authors and then researchers, and he influenced Isaac Newton. Now you can see a clear map before you by way of networks of your authors. And you can also see here, if you go down, you can see what are all the pioneering works that he has done and what is the related works. His studies, personality, tradition, and revolution, you can definitely study about the various. For example, you can see Nicholas Copernicus has influenced him. You can see all those related works. The same thing you can repeat for your own area, and then you can find what is the map. In fact, this particular identities map, it's still an infancy. It may not be able to give you for everything, but definitely majority of the research topics and researchers is already available here. This will help you to create your map of various researchers relating to your area and then combine them and putting them into a crisp form of identity network of the authors to whom you are referring. Based on this, you can definitely go to other websites in order to find out. If you are working something on medicine, medical related areas, or computer related areas, I wish to suggest for you another site, which is semanticscholar.org. The advantage of semanticscholar.org is it will give you, for example, it is an artificially generated one. It will give you, for example, facial recognition software. And you will see here, it has started way back in 1936. And you can have papers up to 2019. And you can see this particular author who has written it in 2003 has been published in 32 highly influential citation papers. And you can also see latest 3 years. For example, in 2006, it has got 70 citations. In 2017, it got 55 citations, and 2018, it got 24 citations. And you can see all these areas relating to your research in these areas. In addition to that, you can also have slides relating to your topic. You may go to this particular slide set, which will give you a complete slide set on this topic, which will talk to you about the various areas relating to facial recognition systems. Now you can see the complete PDF document which explains the basics till the latest area. Therefore, this is another important search which you can do so that you will be able to do your research in a far more better way. Semantic Scholar is having almost all the computer related areas and medical related areas, and you can see here, therefore you can have computer science and medicine. That's what they are doing, but some of the topics may have a similarity from your side. Therefore you can definitely use Semantic Scholar for your search. I wish you all the best to prepare a sampling map based on WorldCat Identities Network and a good search based on Semantic Scholar and other related areas for you to prepare a good research sample map. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best.
Data, now this is a very important thing. If the researcher is able to find a theory which provides satisfactory contours for his research, he will go ahead either with correlational research or experimental research methods. There are, in management and social sciences, you have only two methods: correlational methods or experimental research methods. Sometimes the correlational methods are also used, they use the word cross-sectional analysis. Anyhow, we will hold on to correlational research method. Correlational research or cross-sectional research. In the correlational research, we observe the natural events. This may be done by taking one single frame to find all the variables and their relationships in a single point of time. The name cross-sectional research, or variables at different points of time. For example, the lifestyle variables such as smoking, exercise, yoga, eating habits may be observed over a period of time with respect to the diseases like diabetes or cancer. Please remember, the researcher is not manipulating any of the independent variables. He just observes and then collects the data. He or she passively observes and measures and comes to prediction or explanation. This is the correlational research and cross-sectional research. Therefore, this is the first method we have exhausted. So, most of the researchers just go there, give their questionnaire, then try to find out the relationship between them and then come out with a prediction or explanation. The next method is experimental research method. Scientific research or scientific questions imply link between the variables. We discussed the dependent and independent variables. Let us consider an example of low self-esteem and interview anxiety. For example, a person is having a very low self-esteem. It is likely to create higher interview anxiety. Now, we are not sure which comes first. In the cross-sectional research, we may measure both these variables with two instruments and then find their relationship. However, we may not be able to answer the question which comes first. Probably the interview anxiety may reduce his self-esteem also. Therefore, self-esteem or interview anxiety, maybe the interview anxiety may lead to low self-esteem. Or there may be a third variable for communication skills may lead to both. We need to rule out the possibility of co-founding variables such as pure communication skills. Please remember the third rule of J.S. Mill. Then, how to establish causality relationships? Experimental methods, causality inference. The only way to infer causality is comparing two situations, both being controlled, one in which the cause is present and the other in which cause is absent. Experimental methods addresses the issue. Let us discuss an example. A researcher wants to study the role of positive motivation on productivity. A manager provides positive motivation for productivity improvement of employees. The motivation is the independent variable and the productivity is the dependent variable. The workers are grouped into three groups, three sets of equal numbers. Set 1 gets positive motivation, whatever is the performance of the worker. She tells them, you're good, keep it up, go ahead, nice thing to do. The set 2 gets a negative motivation. Whatever the workers do, they will be telling, no, you are absolutely not up to the mark, you have to rush through things. The third set gets no motivation. The manager just looks at them blank, says, go ahead. So there are three sets of people. If motivation is a very important variable, the performance may differ between all the three. On the other hand, if it is not so, there may not be much difference between all the three groups. Now, the manager has manipulated the motivation, the independent variable, and tried to prove the relationships with the productivity, the dependent variable. The productivity may be measured by number of items produced in a given time. The manager will compare the results with that of the group where there is no motivation with that of the groups where there is motivation or negative motivation. Probably we will say positive motivation or negative motivation. So he compares those results and then comes out with his finding. And this is experimental research. Now you can do this by way of a questionnaire, giving a questionnaire and then finding out. In that you are not involving yourself into the entire process. In the experimental research, you will be manipulating the independent variable to get the results and then find out whether there is any differences and then come out with your inferences. Now, experimental research outcomes, the manager will report on the effectiveness by comparing the means of production of workers in different groups by statistically and prove probable causality. Still remember, it is probable causality, but not total causality. Now, there are two methods of data collection in experiments. One is manipulation of the independent variable on different subjects. Now, this is generally known as between the subjects or independent design. Manipulation of individual variables on same subject 1, 2, 3. It is known as within subject or repeated measure design. The sample size differs for both the types of data collection. Therefore, we have to understand, is it an independent design or a repeated measure design? Then what kind of sample size we have to give? Now discussion. We discussed characteristics of variables, validity of our measurements, theory building, hypothesis, and two methods of data collection. Sampling has a role to play at every stage. Please do remember, if you take very low samples, the entire efforts go waste. If you take very high samples, it will be very high cost. Therefore, optimum sample size is one of the most important objectives of researchers. Therefore, this discussion may help you in doing your sampling course well. The sampling size depends on all these aspects. I suggest a sampling map that is based on literature review will be of value to you. The map should be in the form of a table. Author, variables, instruments used, validity and reliability, major hypothesis, methods of data collection used, inference, number of samples, and limitations of study. A sampling map will help the researcher to have a good understanding of why of sampling design. Thank you very much.